Jim Rohn said, you should have the goal to be a millionaire, but not for the $1 million, but rather for what it will make of you to become a millionaire. It will require you to become a different person, a more capable, a smarter, a wiser, a better planner. You will have to learn a lot of things to get from where you are to where you want to be, and that's the key reason why you should have that as a goal. I completely agree with Jim Rohn. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 6 habits that you can implement that will help you get whatever you want in life, whether that's millions of dollars or any other goal that you want. 2 key principles I want to describe before I go into the 6 habits. One is deliberate practice. There's a lot of research on this subject. Deliberate practice is how you can develop skills and expertise in any subject. And the research is really clear. And there's a book by Anders Ericsson. He's the guy who's been studying high performers for the last 30 years. And what he's found is that we all have very adaptive brains. None of us have just an innate potential, but rather our potential as human beings is flexible. And most things can be trained. In other words, you can train and become world class at chess or at tennis or at finance. But you need to actually define what you want. So you have to have a clear vision of your future self, and then you have to have specific skills and attributes that you want to develop. Then you need coaching, teaching, and mentoring from people who are already there who can get you there. But there is a process and a way for you to develop the skills you have to get to where you want to go. The second concept is called prospection. And prospection is the idea that as human beings, our lives are driven by the views that we have of our own future. Whatever future you see for yourself, that's the thing actually guiding and driving your behavior in the present. And so that's super important to realize that your current behavior, your mindset, your identity is being driven by your view of your own future. And as human beings, we create futures and then we use those futures to drive our present. You know, if I am a college student and I want to see myself graduating, I use that view of my future self graduating to drive my actions, my decisions, my planning in the present. That's what makes us conscious human beings. It's absolutely amazing. But then it puts the impetus on you. You have to decide the future you want, and then you have to use that future to drive your present. And it's up to you whatever future you pick, but whatever future you pick, that's what drives you. And that takes me to habit number 1. You have to decide what you want. People who are successful, they're proactive. They begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey would say. They decide what they want. They make decisions. They own their human right to make choices. And I'm not saying that you have pure free will and that you can make yourself fly, but you can choose what you want. And as Neil Maxwell said, whatever you desire over time, you eventually become. So you have to decide what you want, and you need to define it and be explicit about it. And what you want is based on what you value, and what you value is based on what you give meaning to. And ultimately, you are a meaning-making machine as a human being, and it's your choice to give whatever you give meaning to. But the key aspect here is that you first have to make the choice. What do you want, and who are you going to be? That's your choice. And the more you own that, the more that you can define your own desires, define your own ambitions, define your own goals, rather than all the goals of other people. You grew up in a certain environment, in a certain context, with parents, with culture, and with friends and peers, and it's easy to not to not define what you want, but to just fall into whatever your friends like or what your parents wanted you to do. Or if you had failures, to lower your vision and your goals for yourself. You have to define what you want and at the level you want. I remember when I first decided I wanted to be an author, I decided I wanted to be a professional author. No one told me that I could be an author. No one told me I couldn't be. I wasn't a good student. I barely graduated from high school. But now I've got all these books that I've written, and it was because I decided to. I decided to become smart. I decided to start reading hundreds of books because that was something I grew to value and want. And then I just decided that's what I want to do. I want to write 50 books in my life. That's just a desire that I have. But that's something that I get to choose. And what you think of me doesn't matter, but also same with you. What other people think of you doesn't matter. You have to decide what you want and what life you're going to live and who you're going to become. That's habit number 1. Habit number 2 is this. Once you've defined what you want, you must then very heavily study and learn from people who are already doing it at the level you want to. So this goes back to deliberate practice. Deliberate practice, one of the key aspects of deliberate practice, which is really interesting and unique, is the key aspect of deliberate practice isn't actually engaging in the activity. So for example, if you want to get really good at tennis, playing tennis, yes, that's a part of practice, but that's not the most important part of deliberate practice. You can go out and play tennis and not get any better. You could play tennis for 10,000 hours and not get any better. The key aspect of deliberate practice is intensely studying, mostly on your own, the people who are at the highest level doing what you want to be doing. So the best form of deliberate practice, if you're a tennis player, would be to study the film, to really study in slow motion, like let's just say Roger Federer, Venus and Serena Williams, like really watch, really study, really analyze, and then take what you learn and maybe get a coach and get coached on implementing and applying at that level so that when you actually do train, you're improving. Rather than just repeating the same mistakes over and over again, you're actually getting better. There's a book called The Little Book of Talent by Daniel Coyle, and that's the first thing he talks about. And there's a lot of research again on this. The people who become high performers, they are obsessive and they study and they're staring at and watching the people who are doing whatever they want to be doing at that level. So if your goal, for example, is to make money, a lot of money, you need to study the people who are doing that, really learn from them, learn what they do, learn how they think. Like that needs to become your focus. Again, most people, there's that whole quote that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Most people, they're studying, analyzing, examining their peers. That is a horrible way to get good at something. You need to study and analyze and obsess on the people you want to become like. I remember when I first started writing blog posts, as an example, I started studying the heck out of the blog posts that I knew had gotten millions and millions of views. I would go and find the viral articles, and I would study meticulously. How is the headline structured? How is the article structured? Like, how is this written? I would just study it. Study the craft. And so whatever it is you want, you need to study those at the level that you want to be at. And you need to really understand in and out how it works. Another key aspect of that is actually getting coaching. People who get where they want to go, they invest in themselves. They invest in themselves and they invest in teachers, mentoring, and they get coaching and they get feedback on how they're doing. And if you want to get to a high level, you need to invest in yourself, even small investments. Just as another example, I remember when I first started blogging online, I paid $199 for an online course that taught me how to write headlines and structure my articles. So you can start small. You can start $100, get a coach. You know, I'm getting into running right now, and I'm investing in that. I'm investing in a running coach because I want to do it better and I want to do it right. And it can be a small investment or a big investment, but the more invested you become, the more committed you become. And commitment is a key aspect of creating results. There's an amazing quote in the book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And what they say is that commitment is a statement of what is. You can know what you're committed to by your results, not by what you say your commitments are. And so basically the idea is what you say you want is not what you're committed to. What you actually are getting on a consistent basis is what you're committed to. And so that's why investing in yourself is big, is because, and there's a lot of research on this as well, investment precedes commitment. In other words, commitment follows investment. Whenever you invest in something, you then become more and more committed to it. And if you're getting coaching by someone who's an expert on that subject, they can help you advance more quickly. So there's 2 aspects of that. First off, study the heck out of the people who are where you want to be. And then second off, actually get training and mentoring, ideally by people who are already where you want to be. Okay, that then takes us to the third habit. The third habit is that you are continually refining your identity and your values through learning. Basically, you need to continuously be learning, reading lots of books, having new experiences, meeting new people, facing failures. Your view of your future is what drives who you are. And you need to ultimately have a lot of learning so that you can set bigger and newer and better goals. Constantly be learning, refining your perspective. That is a crucial aspect of becoming successful, of becoming a millionaire, or of achieving any goal, is constantly learning. There's a really good ratio that I've heard, and that's that as far as entertainment and education, you should probably have the 80-20, 80% education versus 20% entertainment. Very important to have entertainment, very important to have relaxing. Another aspect of that, though, is the whole idea of sharpening the saw. So there's the quote from Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln said, you know, if he had 6 hours to chop down a tree, he'd spend the first 5 hours cutting, sharpening the saw or sharpening the axe so that it's easy to cut down the tree. Well, that's how your brain works. You want to actually spend 80% of your even working time learning versus just chopping. A lot of people, they're just chopping, and they're chopping with a dull blade. That's like going out and playing tennis, as an example, with your current skills. Sharpening the saw would be learning, refining, studying again those who are at where you want to be. So just to clarify 1s, 2, and 3, define what you want at the level you want, study those who are up there, get mentoring ideally by people who are up where you want to be, and then continuously learn, refine, and prune, sharpen that axe. And And as you constantly learn, your values, your goals, and your very identity will change. Think about it. What would happen if you read 1,000 insanely powerful books? You would see yourself, you'd see the world differently. You'd value things differently. You'd be approaching things differently. You would not have your current goals. Let's just say that. You would be approaching things very differently. So you have to constantly be learning and letting go of your former views that are ultimately keeping you at your current level. Because your future self sees things differently than you see them. Your future self has learned things that you haven't learned. They value things you don't currently value. They know things you don't know, and therefore they can make better decisions than you can currently make. All right, that now takes us to habit 4, which is to continually stretch yourself through new experiences. So there's a great quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., and he said that a mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its former dimensions. A mind that has been stretched by a new experience can never go back. One of my favorite stories on this subject comes from the famous chef Charlie Trotter. Charlie Trotter had a restaurant in Chicago. It was fine dining, 3 Michelin stars. Oprah loved the restaurant. People came from all over the world to eat at this guy's restaurant. They had a wait list forever, and it was one of those meals that was hundreds of dollars, multiple courses, just absolutely mind-blowing, pristine food. And here's what's really interesting about Charlie Trotter is that regularly when the restaurant was closed, for example, like during various hours, he would bring in groups of homeless kids from Chicago and give them the full experience. He wouldn't just give them food. He would give them the full experience, the full courses, just blow their minds and just completely give them some experience that they didn't even know was possible. He was stretching their view of reality. So Stephen Covey has this amazing quote. He says, "We see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we've been conditioned to see it." None of us see the world the same way. We all have been conditioned to see our own subjective reality. And so what Charlie Trotter was doing was he was taking these kids and exposing them to something completely beyond anything that they had ever experienced. And he got a lot of flack for it. A lot of people, they criticized Charlie Trotter. How dare you give these kids this experience? You're creating unrealistic expectations for them. There's no way that they're going to be able to have what you've just shown them. And he didn't care because what he was doing, and as he stated, he wanted to give the kids new goals. He wanted to expand their perspective of what was possible for them. There's a great quote, 2 great quotes. One from Albert Einstein, "Imagination is more important than knowledge," but also from Napoleon Hill. He said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve." You have to conceive it, which means you've got to have had the most expansive experiences. Those kids, when they went into Charlie Trotter's restaurant and they had that peak experience, and peak experiences are required to becoming self-actualized, their views of what was possible completely expanded, which expanded their ability to imagine bigger futures. And he would get letters, by the way. Charlie Trotter would get letters from the kids saying, "Thank you so much. I want to now open a restaurant," or "Thank you for giving me that experience. I now believe in myself." So you are like the kids in Charlie Trotter's restaurant. You are limited by what you know. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are, or as you've been conditioned to see it. And you need to regularly have those peak experiences which stretch your mind so that it can never go back to its former dimensions. Well, there's a lot of research on this subject. As people age, they usually become less and less open to having new experiences. A lot of research shows that people in their teens and in their 20s, their personalities change more than any other period of their life, not because that's when they're most pliable, but that's because that's when they're having the most new, fresh experiences, and they're seeking a bigger future. First time on a date, first time in a job, first time living on your own, first time this, first time that. Well, when was the last time you had a first time experience? You know, you need to continually stretch yourself, put yourself in new environments, put yourself around new people, put yourself under new conditions, and stretch yourself. One of the reasons why people don't seek new experiences is because either they're physically or emotionally difficult or uncomfortable. Think about it. For example, taking an ice cold shower, or even more, jumping into like an ice lake, like having an intense experience. It opens you up. Obviously, you want to do it safely, but people avoid new things because it's outside their comfort zone. Actually, what they say is the foundation of all fears is uncertainty. The reason people are uncomfortable with new experiences is because they're uncertain. Our brain is literally a prediction machine. Our brain is designed to form memories so that we can predict the outcomes of our behaviors. Well, when you're having new experiences, you can't accurately predict those outcomes. And so then you experience the fight or flight. You start experiencing anxiety, uncertainty, uncomfort, and so you quickly revert back to your comfort zone. Well, you need to get more and more what's called psychologically flexible, getting better and better at being out of your comfort zone and having mind-expansive, stretching experiences, because then that gives you confidence, but it also, like the kids in Charlie Trotter's, it stretches your imagination of what's possible. So that's habit number 4, is that you need to continually stretch yourself through peak experiences, through having new experiences and through seeking new experiences, so that you can then see have new possibilities. Habit number 5 is that you continually expand yourself through higher and higher quality relationships. There's a theory in psychology called the self-expansion model. And basically what the idea is that as human beings, our ability to produce results, that's what they call efficacy, is not innate, but it's rather contextual and relational. In other words, my ability to produce results in my life is based on the resources I have to put towards those goals, and the resources I have to put towards those goals are based on the relationships I have. So let me give a really simple example. When my wife and I were graduate students, we became foster parents of 3 kids. Those kids came from a really bad background. They came from basically living in the ghetto in a trailer park in the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and their potential in that context was very limited. They didn't have the resources to put towards their goals. They couldn't go to school because their parents were on drugs. Their parents didn't have any knowledge, very much knowledge to give to them, so that they couldn't have good goals, but they didn't have money or time or energy to put towards anything, and so their potential is very limited. Once you put them into a new environment, a new context, and my wife and I were far from perfect parents, but we had far more resources to give to these kids, so their potential as a human being immediately expanded, because your potential is based on who you're in a relationship with, because who you're in a relationship with determines the resources you have, whether that be knowledge, time, energy, love, money, the resources you have to put towards your goals. So you have more efficacy as a person based on the resources you have to put towards those goals, and those resources come through relationships. So once we got our 3 kids, they were all at least a year behind in school. And we got them tutors. We got them on sports teams. We got them in church. They had new friends. They had expanded family, cousins, grandparents. We traveled with them. We helped give them peak experiences. Traveled all over the United States. They had never been out of their state. We took them all over the place and showed them a new world. We also gave them our worldview, our belief system, our energy, our care. We got them routines. So they had all sorts of resources, including our knowledge, our belief system, our love, our care, that then expanded their potential. And now at this point, they're not only caught up, but they're above the curve because they now have more resources to put towards their goals, which expands their potential. And you are the same way. Your potential is based on who you're in a relationship with. What you can do with some people is very different from what you can do with other people, and who you are in relation to some people is different from who you are. So if you start surrounding yourself with different mentors, with different friends, with different people, you start stretching your ability. Your potential as a person is expanded as you develop higher quality relationships. And people who continually grow in their life, they're continually surrounding themselves and creating connections and collaborations with higher and higher quality people. And this is something I can definitely say I've applied, but I can even apply it enormously better, because you take massive leaps when you start creating transformational relationships with the right people. There are transformational relationships and there's transactional relationships. People who are low level generally have transactional relationships where it's just all about giving and taking. You just get whatever you can get. It's more 50-50, whereas transformational relationships, you create relationships for the purpose of self-expansion, for the purpose of growth, for the purpose of change. And when 2 very high level people are entering in those types of relationships, the goal is that you both come out different people with different capabilities and different potential. And just as one simple example, I used to be a lot more individualistic. I worked on books by myself, and I still work on books by myself. But, this is a book that I co-authored with a guy named Dan Sullivan, who I wanted to develop a transformational relationship with. He's 76 years old. He's got a company called Strategic Coach, which is the number 1 entrepreneurial coaching company in the world. And he's been coaching high-level entrepreneurs for 45 years. I believe he knows more about it than anyone on the planet. And I wanted to develop a relationship with him because I knew if I was in a relationship with him, based on what he knew, his resources, not just his network, but his knowledge, I would be a different person if I had access and a close connection with him. And so I developed a transformational relationship with him, which led to the writing of this book and multiple books to come in the future. So you can develop collaborative, powerful, transformational relationships in the form of business, in the form of anything. It could be, my wife is a transformational relationship. She's got knowledge, skills, capabilities, resources that I just could never have. And I bring the same thing. We both bring different things to the table. Habit number 6, which I've slightly covered already, is invest heavily in whatever goal you have for your future. So for example, if you want to succeed in any area, let's just give tennis. The more invested you become in that, the better and faster you'll grow in that area. I already talked about how I invest massively in myself as a writer. But right now, I want to get better at running. And so I'm investing in that for the first time. I've never invested in like running coaching before. So people who grow, people who succeed, people who continually expand, they're investing more and more in themselves. You're the ultimate investment in yourself. And you never want to view investing in yourself as a cost, because you're not a cost. You're an investment. And when you invest in something, you become a higher level potential. You're not just, when you invest in yourself, your potential expands, it grows, and you ultimately can do it. Think about it from the self-expansion model perspective I just gave. When I take myself and I now combine myself with a really high-level running coach, now my potential changes because I now have the resources of that high-level running coach. And so invest in your future self and invest at the level of your future self. The more invested you become, the more committed you are. And the more committed you are, the more your results start to change. So those are 6 millionaire habits, just straight up. Defining what you want, getting trained and studying at the level of those you want, continually, refining your mindset, your beliefs, your behavior through constant learning, stretching yourself through new experiences, expanding yourself through improved relationships, and investing in yourself at higher levels. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Down below is a free link to my 30-day Future Self course. Will blow your mind. And then on this page, you can get access to other free videos on this YouTube channel. Have an amazing day.